Given that I'm of the belief that Kaguya-sama has gotten progressively better with each season, and the more episodes you watch in a season, the better the show becomes. So when I saw so many people early into this season be like, hey, this is going to be the best season hands down, we're getting into the best content, I believed them without a second guess. But it's just still great to see how this cast continues to surprise me, even so many episodes in. And the fact that they still haven't officially confessed, but it feels like we've seen so many moments of confession-ish moments, even though there was definitely some, even in this episode, that were misunderstood by characters like Iino. But I mean, just to see an episode that starts off pretty serious, the idea of the parent-teacher interviews, where do you want to go in your future? Do you have the emotional moments? I thought Hayasaka's mother wasn't going to be there, and then to see how she melted, Kage being pretty down in the dumps that her own parents aren't there, then she gets unofficial mom and dad to steal the show, to then just easing into essentially asking one out on a date, and then just the entire shenanigans that take place after. This show really feels like it's trying to prove something this season, almost like we're going to get to something that's going to make the end of Season 1 or Season 2 just look small in comparison, and then wherever the story goes afterwards, I mean, it feels like we're about to enter new territory. It truly, truly does. I mean, someone like the president, Miyuki is saying, like, he's going to be going overseas, like, he's going to pursue his career. So for him, asking Kaguya now, like, you can't avoid it anymore. And honestly, to his defense, he lived up to it. There's been so many moments with him where he's like, he realizes he has to do something, and then he chickens out, and then we get a comedy scene, right? But in his defense, he literally recognized that the only time he'll have time and potentially even see someone like Kaguya, he has to ask her out now, even though he's like doing these mental loopholes, this mental gymnastics, that it's not actually him confessing, it's just going on a date, and then post-date is when all this shit would occur. But he did ask her, he was nervous as shit, and then she shot him down, and then she realized what that actually was, and then we get that entire situation. It's actually great to see, because if you compare the boldness of these two now compared to where they were in the early stages of Season 1, despite them not officially out loud saying, I love you, I want to date you, there has been major steps forward. And of course, they still find new ways to up the ante, like a character like Iino not realizing that Miyuki is just an idiot, and that's not him confessing or asking for you to confess, it's him just not knowing how to basically hand you a quiz to rate him out of 10 in terms of being a man. But it was great. I think my favorite part of the entire episode had to be the idea of almost like the video game health bar, but in this case, it's their confidence meter, because ultimately, they're both trying to get back into that motion, and they're hoping the next person who walks through that door will be the reason they can go out on that date. And I mean, I was totally expecting something with you would, like, beat them down. Him making fun of someone in the hallway because of the exact same thing wasn't on my mind, but it's the idea I was assuming would go on with a man like him, so that made sense. I just wasn't expecting them to pile on, like with Iino breaking it up, being like, how dare they, and then just to see the confidence dwindle more and more, and ultimately the date ended up between two best bros, and I mean, it looked like they still had fun, but it's not what either of them truly really wanted, right? I'm a sucker for the will they, won't they, but I really feel like Kaguya gets it better than most, because rather than the only main interesting point being the will they, won't they between someone like Kaguya and Miyuki, what this show does a brilliant job with is that all the different character stories taking place are equally as interesting as the main couple, right? Or the potential couple in the making. So when you have all those moments, like, I mean, look at the parent-teacher interview, right? I mean, you go from, I thought we were establishing Hayasaka to be in a pretty emotional territory. Nope, total mama's girl, and she was super happy. She was down in the dumps and immediately turned her frown upside down. And then you have it on the flip side with Kaguya. Of course, you get the fun stuff with Miyuki's dad and everything, but, I mean, to see them as the unofficial parents, and then just that kind of stab to the heart of Kaguya having no dreams of her own because she just does what her parents are saying, it's pretty heartbreaking. So it almost feels to me like, given the fact that Miyuki is progressing into such a bold new territory, someone like Kaguya, I wouldn't be shocked if she follows him after learning where he wants to go. Mainly because I could totally see something like that happening where, like, for the first time in her life, she decides what she wants to do. At the same time, in a kind of Kaguya emotional fashion, I wouldn't be shocked if she then changes her mind, because at the same time, I could see these two needing to split up for a time, kind of like finding their own paths and lives in terms of, and then eventually coming back together. Maybe they'll start together, maybe they'll drift apart, come back together, sort of a thing. it's kind of like that roller coaster of life, right? I mean, right now, they're at a very easy point in their life. They're always around each other, they're part of the student council, but I mean, both of them aren't going to walk the exact same paths in life, but it doesn't mean they can't be together eventually sometime in the future, right? So it's going to be interesting to see where they want to take it, where this season will end. But ultimately, it does feel like this season has really found its groove in the kind of like ultra romantic tag, right? There's constantly confessions. There's constantly romance undertones. There's constantly bickering like no other. And the way the studio continues to just find new ways to make it creative, like Chika going into a color frenzy when thinking about just the idea of Miyuki and the fact that she calls him her problem child, right? Everything about it is just so damn good, and the production from top to bottom, whether it's the openings, whether it's the endings, whether it's the overall voice casting in terms of how they still feel like the perfect casting for every which angle you look at the characters, it just goddamn brings a grin to my face. Well, I think Kaguya started out as a pretty popular show almost from the get-go, right? Season 1, Episode 1, the first handful of episodes. It's pretty crazy because I don't think many anime fans expected it to get into such good emotional territory without completely forgetting about the comedy that kind of defined it in the early stages, because for an episode that literally was mostly laughs, they had subtle reminders about Kaguya's insecurities and the fact that she's almost chained down by the family line there. You have, the subtle remarks with you. He can do literally whatever he wants. He could be a loser and be a shut-in, do nothing. Of course, that's not where he's going to go, given his emotional journey over season 2 and 3. But the fact that he has options himself, but then you compare it to someone like Kaguya who has no options, it feels like. And that clearly is going to be a hurdle for her, which more than likely Miyuki will be the key into showing her the path of choosing your own path in life, right? I just love it. I really feel like the characters are shining, and I mean, even though Chika still murders the characters left and right with her no-chill attitude, it does still feel like this group truly does care for one another, and that's why even when you have characters like Iino talking so much mad shit about you, she's generally trying to give him advice that will help him, like, don't be a shut-in, don't be an idiot, at the very least go to college and choose your path afterwards, right? I just love how the characters, despite this almost like headstrong attitude, they really do have each other's backs, and whether they're in love with each other or just consider each other friends, or unfortunately they just have to be around each other, they do have each other's backs, and that's what makes a show like this so great. And the thing that really does help seal an episode like this is, like, Kaguya is known for picking and choosing moments. Sometimes I know they just adapt like chapter to chapter, like kind of arc to arc, and then other times they pick and choose and condense it into an episode to feel great. And it's really cool to see so many manga readers love that about Kaguya, because often if it's not page by page, chapter to chapter, I see manga readers, source readers criticize that, but when it comes to Kaguya, people are constantly saying, hey, I read the manga, but I'm so glad that they decided to add this piece from here and this piece from here, because it made for a way more coherent episode, and you just love to see that, because you don't see it often enough in anime, especially when you're adapting a manga. Thoughts if you have any, whether you're a fan of that source material or if you're anime original, let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.